So before I start, what is your title at the company? President,
I,
CEO,
I'm the plant manager here.
plant manager. Okay, here we go.
Uh, Pretty hard to. I don't know. It'll be pretty hard to climb out of anything higher than that. Um, Heck, I got to be out on the floor all day. It's. I don't see a life where I'm going to be just able to sit at a desk and direct people.
Okay.
I wish. You know.
Okay, here we go. We are honored to have Wes Szpondowski on the show. Welcome to Swarfcast, Wes.
Thank you very much.
I have known Wes for quite a while. He's been a contributor over the years to today's machining world, shop doc. Uh, he's often been a very creative, technical person, and yeah, it's great to reconnect. So, what I want to do first is talk about Wyandotte, the company, and also get your story. I'm sure the two are quite intertwined. But first of all, what is Wyandotte?
Well, we started off in 1959. My grandfather worked for another company, and he was a plant manager at another company. And the other company where he was working, they decided they wanted to focus on a particular market and get rid of the market that they were in. They had cold headers and they had screw machines and they made fasteners. It was a company called Detroit Diamond, and my grandpa felt that the market that they were abandoning was a good market to be in, and the market that they were going in was a market that maybe you didn't want to be in. So the market that they abandoned was the how could I say the custom fastener market, special order stuff. So that's where Wyandotte got its start. But believe it or not, making parts that look relatively simple, um, nuts, slotted nuts, lug nuts, um, different types of jam nuts. Um,
What were they using? Acme's?
yeah, yeah. And my grandpa liked the Acme's, and his original machines came out of a junkyard. He pulled them; they were Model Gs, and he pulled them out of a junkyard and fixed them up good enough to run. The Model Gs didn't even have a lube system other than pipe cleaners. They would run, the lube oil would drain off of pipe cleaners onto components inside the machine's gearbox.
So what model Acme's are these?
That
What
was the Model G.
what
So that was
size?
even before Model R. That would have been, I think it was from 2 1/4, 2 5/8. They had a strange gearbox, like I said, they're kind of before my time. I hear about the stories of them.
Six spindle?
Yeah, 4 and 6 spindle. There was a lot of 4 spindles back in those days. Uh, It these machines were, well, if you know 1 1/4 RA6, it has a gearbox that's on the side of it. Well, these machines, there were 2 5/8 machines that had a gearbox on the side, just like that 1 1/4 RA6 that people use.
Okay.
So I'd hear about it from, when I was a younger guy. The older guys would be telling me about these machines, and I actually have a picture of one. So I'm seeing it, and I'm like, wow. So that's a concept that had been around for many years, having the gearbox on the side of them, the Model G.
Interesting.
So he went from Model G to Model R, and then from Model R to Model RA, and then to Model RB. When I started here, we were into Model RA, Model RB, and the consensus was, wow, you got an RB, and you got Cadillacs, because you have the spindles with tapered roller bearings. The old ball bearing spindles were good. They lasted a long time, but when they finally went, they went. And you were in trouble. And they were a hard bearings to find. They were costly, and there's no adjustment in them.
I always find it strange, though, how like Acme's had the ball bearings, and then Wickman's started with the tapered bearings, and then they changed to the ball bearings later.
I wonder if it's just the nature of, with Acme's, how people have a way of just running them forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing about the tapered roller bearings is they're very well suited to be ran forever, and if you need to get just a little bit out of them, you can find a way to get a little bit out of them. I had a 3.5 RB6 from about 1945 in here, and
wow,
was in the 90s, probably late 90s, and this thing had never had spindle bearings, and wherever it had ran for so many years that there was actually a gap in between the spindles, a big gap, probably about a 1/4 inch between the spindles and these bronze seats that the spindles sit in. And this machine had ran, wherever it had ran, it must have ran just day and night for, who knows, 40 or 50 years. So we finally get it, and these bearings are just trash, and we decided to get rid of the machine because the spindles are so expensive to fix, and the machine just wasn't attractive enough to really want to put that kind of money into it. But the tapered bearings, that little bit of adjustment, sometimes that can get you through.
So you think that the reason that Acme's kept the reason it's synonymous with Acme's is basically because the Acme's are meant to last 50 years. So even if, are they less accurate than ball bearings?
God, I've heard this is a question that I have asked. I've asked a lot of people this question.
Less rigid, I think. They're more rigid than ball bearings.
Yeah. The story I've gotten over the years when I've asked people about this is, I've heard stories about how great, like if you got an Acme that had the older style bearings, if you got one that was in great condition, then you had something. You had a machine that it could last for years. But I've heard the story of I've heard they don't make them anymore. They're hard to get. I've heard stories like that where the Timken tapered roller bearings are a lot more readily available. Okay. So it might be a case of are these a standard part? How standard of a part are they? You could see with an Acme, when you're dealing with a bearing and a spindle that lasts for 50 years in your larger machines, 40 or 50 years if well lubricated, there's not much of a market to sell them.
Yeah.
So the problem is who's going to make them if there's not much of a market to sell them, if people aren't changing them all the time. So I think that finding a supplier that could make the spindle bearings and supply them, I would think that definitely probably came into play there.
So that brings me to the question: your company, are all your multi-spindles Acme's? I know you have some other equipment.
Yeah, we have a few Davenports too.
Mm-hmm.
We used to buy our Davenport parts from a supplier down the street, and we kind of saw the writing on the wall with them probably 15 years ago that they probably weren't going to make it. Mm-hmm. They really didn't go out of their way to get the certs that you need to have. Nowadays, you need all these certs.
Certs? You mean certifications?
Yeah. If you want to sell parts to good customers that pay you on time and even pay you a fair price for your product. And hey, there's exceptions on that, I'm sure, but our consensus is that our customers asked us to get these certs. We had to get these certs if we wanted to keep them as customers. So we have to be audited, every year for those certs. And so this shop down the street that was making, they didn't have the certs, and we really didn't give them enough business, to keep their doors open. Uh-huh. So their business was dying off, and they did a good job of supplying us. They were a very cost-effective supplier. they were smaller than us. Your mom and pop shop that they're cheap. They don't put any money. They don't spend much money. They can sell you parts for cheaper than you can make those. And
Yeah.
so we used them for a lot of years. And when we saw it coming to an end, we started getting into the Davenports. We don't want to be huge into the Davenports because we feel, at least I feel, a Davenport's a machine that takes more skill to set up.
Then an Acme?
Oh, certainly. Oh yeah, yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, and they're higher maintenance than an Acme. They require more repair.
But
You
yeah.
changing out bearings more frequently. They're finicky. You can't throw some gnarly job into them or chip monster into them. They're pretty well suited for running the milder steels and brass and some of the non-chippy aluminums where you're not having a chip issue, and they're fast. And they've come out with some better designs. They've come out with some better spindles with better bearings.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not there.
Would you rather have a 7/16 or 9/16 Acme than a Davenport?
No, no. We just didn't go that direction. I don't know. I kind of feel like there's not a lot of parts out there for those Acmes.
It's not the same kind of part that you'd run on a Davenport?
We like the Davenports. We felt like they offer a lot of attachments that are affordable.
Yeah, that's true.
So you've got these affordable worth an Acme. The attachments aren't so affordable, and Davenport has all these attachments that you can afford. They're really good for what they do.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to beat them for what they do. The hard part with the Davenport is finding people that can work on them, that are good at working on them. Not easy to find that aspect, that's for sure. And Acme's a simpler machine.
It's got to be hard to find people to work on those too, right?
Oh gosh, yeah, it is.
So you are in. Let's go back. You're in Wyandotte, Michigan.
Yeah.
So that is it's a suburb of Detroit.
Yes.
Okay, and so
we to go back, we
yeah.
we started off in fasteners, and for many years we made specifically fasteners. We really we have what we call fasteners, which are nuts typically,
Mm-hmm.
and we have what we call screw machine parts, which that could be pins, it could be bushings, it could be fittings. We call those screw machine parts.
Why aren't fasteners screw machine parts?
We just didn't classify them.
But you still make them on screw machines.
Oh yeah. Well, the difference is we considered fasteners nuts easier parts to make.
Okay.
Although you'd be surprised. I mean, when we outsource, over the years we've outsourced some of our fasteners to screw machine houses, and it's amazing how bad they struggled to make these parts that we would look at them and think these are pretty simple parts.
Mm-hmm.
So they had their own share of you take this special nut and it's made out of 4140 and it's gnarly, and you send it to some screw machine house and they're used to making everything out of 12L14, and all of a sudden it's like they've hit a brick wall. It's a totally different kind of struggle than the struggle that they're used to dealing with. So even though the parts were simple, the parts had their fair share of challenges.
Okay.
And we make some nuts that, hey, the quality has to be there in the products. The customers are not messing around. Believe it or not, customers could nitpick on things like they want the chamfer on each side of that double chamfer nut to meet a certain spec and look a certain way, and they're not kidding.
Yeah.
You can't have a batch of parts where some parts have a huge chamfer, some parts have hardly any chamfer. these are the problems we ran into with typical screw machine houses when we tried to source those parts. Is they don't understand. They did not understand that, the aspect of consistency. But anyway, what happened? We started in the late '90s. I think the fastener business wasn't as strong as it had been for many years. We called it was a niche market, and it wasn't as strong as it had been. And we decided, hey, we're going to have to become more of a general job shop. We're going to have to start making screw machine product. So that's what we started doing. We started making parts that were different than the typical parts we were used to making. So our people, they're used to making all these fasteners, and they know how to make these fasteners well. All of a sudden, you start throwing jobs at them that they're not familiar with, and they start making mistakes. Just like the general screw machine job shop could make mistakes on a lot of our parts that we found easy to make.
So what did you do about that?
Oh, we improved over the years. Our people, there was a learning curve, and our people, they got used to making things round parts, parts with all these, fancy profiles. And believe it or not, like when in my early years here, it wasn't unusual for there to be a shave. If we had 35 machines out there might only been 2 shave holders out there running at once, where a shave holder is a pretty standard aspect of a screw machine. When you go into the world of screw machine parts, you're using shave holders with regularity. So we had to learn how to use things that, things like a shave holder, more shave holders, figure out what type of shave holder did we like, training our employees, what was good about the new way of doing things. We were simple. When we were just a fastener company, we were simple how we did things. We had things set up simple, and it was my grandfather's way of, if you're simple, then your machines are never down. Problem was when you're that simple and you have more second ops on parts, customers did not want to pay for that. So you lose work. So we had to become more sophisticated on our screw machines. We had to do more. We went from how we made nuts for many years is we just produced blanks. We produced multiple blanks off a screw machine. So we might have produced 2 parts at a time, 2 nut blanks at a time, or 3 nut blanks at a time off 6 and 8 spindle machines. And then those parts would go to secondary and they'd get finished processed.
Yeah.
They would get back chamfered, they would get tapped, all that. So the machines were pretty plain Jane. So we went from making nuts that way to making nuts where we back chamfered them and we tapped them right on the screw machine. So more along the lines of how a general screw machine house would do things. And believe it or not, I over the years, I would get calls from screw machine houses, one of them down the street. They're asking me, they're picking my brain for how do you make multiples off of a screw machine? Because we knew pretty well how to make multiples.
Multiples? What is multiples?
Cutting off more than 1 part at a time per cycle.
Oh, like double feed out?
We didn't double feed out. We would feed out all the stock at once, and we would form 2 or 3 nuts at a time, and we would drill multiple nuts, and we would cut off multiple nuts per cycle. We would use things like combination drills, and that was how we managed to do that. It was a more complex way to make nuts. Operators struggled more. Your guys from other shops, when they came into your shop, they weren't compatible because your way of doing things was so different than what they were used to doing. But this was one of my grandpa's ways was we're going to just put out simple nut blanks off the screw machine. We're going to put them out in multiples. We're going to get those blanks over to secondary. We're going to finish processing them, and we're going to finish tapping.
Right, and that worked at the time, but then as time goes by, you have to make parts faster, more efficiently if you're going to keep making money and beating the competition.
Well, I think what we saw an improvement in tooling technology. We saw the carbides and things like that came out, so it allowed us to get better cycle times at running just a single part at a time. And when we were able to get those better cycle times, then we could do things like put a countersink in the back of it, tap it, And don't get me wrong, there are some customers where we still put out blanks
Mm-hmm.
because maybe the product has to be threaded after heat treat or even threaded after plate.
Okay,
It depends.
so who are your main customers? Automotive, ag.
Well, a small amount of a lot of aftermarket. We sell aftermarket. We sell aircraft. We sell defense. We sell heavy equipment. Um,
And all that stuff. How? I mean, so what machines do you have besides Acme's?
well, we have Mazak lathes.
Mm-hmm.
That was another market that we went into. I think in the beginning, I think the idea was to be able to make the smaller volume product. The problem with an Acme, somebody sends you an order for 1,500 parts, and it requires two form tools, a shave tool, a specialty reamer, all this, a couple $1,000s in tooling to get the job off the ground.
Yeah, and a
And
bunch
you
of
could,
time to set
yeah,
it
oh,
up
days worth of time you're burning
and
getting it set,
talent.
and you could throw that into a single spindle lathe, and okay, maybe it takes if the Acme could put out the part in, say, I don't know, 25 seconds, and that's probably slow for, that's slow sounding for your average screw machine guy, but this is a screw machine house where we're not typically running the softer steels. So
Okay.
25 seconds is nothing, is pretty run of the mill in this place. Because we're not flying through free machining stuff, but let's just say it ran at 30 seconds on an Acme. Well, completed, it runs off the Mazak at, I don't know, maybe 75, 80 seconds, but you're looking at a
That's
setup
not
that,
that much different. I mean, well, it's twice as much, but it's not 5 times as
oh,
much.
the cost, take the cost of tooling, per part. The nice thing about a CNC lathe is you're dealing with standardized tooling, that's sitting there. So that was a pretty big cost savings, but there's
When did that change for you guys? When did you start going to Mazaks?
bought our first Mazak back in 2008. Was it
Mm-hmm.
no, 2009? Fall of 2009. I bought that machine out of New Jersey. I bought it. It was funny. Airfare was $800 if I flew directly to New Jersey. So I took a flight to Baltimore that dropped me, that connected in Trenton, New Jersey. So I got off in, I think it was Trenton. It was either Newark or Trenton. I can't remember. And so I just got off the flight, picked up a rental car, and I was there. And that flight was $180 versus, paying a fortune for a plane ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at the first Mazak, and I sent it over here, and that machine was just a simple 2-axis lathe. I learned how to run that machine. Had a guy in the front office, one of our sales guys. He came out of a Mazak place, and he knew a little bit with programming, enough to kind of tell me some of the basics, and that was helpful. Because with a Mazak, once you understand the basics, then it's like you just take it from there. It's not a very hard machine to learn. I didn't find it a hard machine to learn at all.
So why do you? Just go back to the story. You specifically remember the price of the airfare.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of money this machine must have made for you must have. The airfare is pretty insignificant when you.
Oh
say
no, no. You
That's
could say
not how you think.
no. You have to think. Every decision you make and every aspect of your living when you're operating a business, you always have to think cost conscious. The moment you get lazy like that, and you're okay with just throwing money away, it doesn't matter if it's your money or if it's someone else's money.
Mm-hmm.
You owe it to who you work for to care about their money. It's about being ethical. In my book, and it doesn't matter, how much money your boss has or whatever. I've heard people, say things like, well, they have a lot of money, so it doesn't matter.
See,
It always, it
but I
always,
mean, could also say I mean, we're just getting philosophical here, but I mean, you could also say, well, the amount of time it took me to take that extra stop, I could have been back at the shop earning my, my money by managing what was going on, etc.
I had the shop running pretty smooth, and it didn't really make a. I think I had to drive. I had to drive to Baltimore like 2 hours or something. So it really wasn't
So
a big.
this is your mentality running your shop. You try to be very detailed in your costs. It sounds like.
I'm frugal, frugal in the right ways. Willing to spend money for purpose, but and I've seen guys that I have a friend that he owns a shop, and they're maybe 10 miles from here, and every now and then I help him out, if he needs help with something or whatever. He had once he couldn't get a tap to size in a machine, and he calls me up. He says, I can't get the tap down. So I went down there and I said, I'll have it for you. I get the tap down, and the problem was I did such a good job on it, then the tap wasn't big enough, so I had to screw it up to make it good enough. So him down there at his shop, he's so cheap. He's cheap to a fault. He will not buy tooling that he needs to operate his equipment. He will hold up a machine, to try to say he'll how could I put it? He'll spend $20 to save $5.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an extreme of that where you could be too extreme. At that particular time, my thought process was business isn't super busy.
No, it's 2009 or 2008, right. So that's understandable.
Business was fairly slow. I had enough work for like 40 hours for everybody, and everything was clicking away pretty good what I had, but I didn't have a ton of business. So when you're in that mentality, it's about, saving your costs. I tell you, I mean, in this place, I mean, once or twice a year, I have a place where I round up our used tooling goes into a collection place,
mm-hmm.
and I will go through our used tooling maybe once or twice a year, and I will put that back into inventory, whatever is still good, because we will not just buy tooling and be swimming in the sea of tooling that we could use that's just being wasted. And you'd be surprised at how much money your employees can waste.
I bet.
And the thing is that money, not only does it belong to the owner of the company, but that is money that belongs to the employees as well. It is key to the success of your company, caring about the little things and making a point of it mattering so much. I think recently, in the past few months, we had a kind of a shake-up here. I had somebody for many years buying my tooling and being my tool crib person. I didn't have a full-time job here for that, but you figure, okay, I'll make it a full-time job if this person could be frugal and they could do a really good job of kind of taking care of that area, because you're dealing with a lot of money each month.
Right. Well, in your business, it's if they're buying material or buying tooling, yeah, they have to be. It all adds up. It's true.
Oh, absolutely. You're dealing with thousands and thousands of dollars each month in tooling, so it's not something that you can afford to just neglect and ignore. So your thinking is, well, I can take somebody and I can kind of put them in charge of that. They can control our costs and they can, keep our costs down. Problem is you can end up with somebody that they, because it's not a full-time job, they don't know really, how can I put it?
Hey, you want to move the camera over a tiny bit, or move yourself. Yeah, there you go. Go on.
So you end up with somebody that they get negligent on you, and they stop caring, and they stop because it's not a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, having sometimes not being busy is the worst thing for a person. That's how life works. It can work that way at home. It can work that way at home too. If you're at home and you get into this habit of just going home and sitting on your butt each night.
So wait, but if the person is working full-time, then they're going to be less busy, right? Because if they're
Yeah.
part-time, then maybe you can keep them busy.
Problem is with a part-time, you have a hard time finding somebody that, you need to have a full-time job to have somebody competent, say,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be competent. So you have, maybe you have 4 hours each day or whatever where there's not much for them to do. Okay, so you're compromising on that. It's debatable. You have guys that are going to be like, no way, what the hell? But I think that was my thought process. So what happens is when you have somebody and they have time like that, then they can become lazier and lazier. I went through two guys like this. I tried to create a job. They became lazier and lazier,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up spending way more money because they don't even want to look for things anymore. You should have a system. Your crib should operate. If you ever go into AutoZone, if you work on cars, I work on cars sometimes. I don't love to, but I don't mind it. Maybe in retirement someday. But if you go into AutoZone, you get a part, you ask for a part, boom, boom, into their computer, and they know where that part is. They have all these shelves, and they know where that part is, and they come right out with that part. Well, your crib should operate that way with your perishable and non-perishable items. That's how you should be set up. You should be able to type into a computer and
And you don't always feel like you are.
Well, that's how I should have been
Join the
set
club.
up. That's how I wasn't set up, and so I ended up with a real mess, with a person that was managing a real mess, and it was costly. It's really costly when you I wouldn't say we're a huge company, but we're about 60 employees. It's costly to be this big and be unorganized. There's a cost every month to being unorganized, because what happens is your tool crib guy, he might get 3 jobs thrown at him at once, and 3 different, they need tooling for 3 jobs. Suddenly, he can't find what he needs because he's a mess and he's not organized. What's he do? Order more. So that's a reaction to that, just order and order and order. So you end up with this growing mess in your company because you're unorganized, and it just makes it worse and worse. And tasks are starting to take more time. So anyway, we had a problem there, and I decided to go ahead and do away with that position in the company.
So then you just had somebody else who was doing something else, and you just put him on two things, or her.
We didn't keep them as an employee at the business. I don't want to say too much about that.
No, what I'm saying is, okay, so after you decided to part ways with that employee, did you just took somebody else and you just gave him that job as well?
It wasn't that easy. My problem was I had a mess in my company that was a mess that only I'd be able to identify. So for 2 months, I came in every Saturday and Sunday. I was here early in the morning. I was here till late at night, going through things. I set up a system. I had available software. Went ahead and started using the available software. Built an inventory. I had items.
So you automated.
Yeah, I had items that were in 3 different locations. So I had all the storage space.
Well, that makes total sense. That sounds like you did the right thing.
Yeah, I had adequate storage space. My problem was, the reason I didn't have enough storage space was because I had 3 items that were stored in 3 different places. 2 out of the 3 were forgotten about, so they weren't even known where they were. So I went through things. I put things into the system. It was nice because as I put things into the system and gave it like a home, and it was like, if you type something into the system, it says where in the crib that item is. So you can go find that item, and I went alphabetically. So section A1, section A2, section A3, A4. So you could go out and you could find that item. So about halfway through, I would run into where I have this item, and it was, weeks ago, I found it for the first time. So I was finding it again, so all of a sudden I could consolidate. So I consolidated items, from being in 2 to 3 different locations into one location. Then I had it into the system what my inventory was on those items. And when you're coming into things like special carbide tooling for jobs, and here we are, we're job shop. Jobs come and go. Sometimes you might get an order for a job that you haven't seen in 5 or 6 years. That customer comes to you and they say, hey, quote us on this. Can you have this job in 3 weeks? Well, maybe none of your competition can, or your competition can, but they've got to put it on a CNC. You're sitting there with inventory of carbide tooling for a screw machine for that job, and you have it on your shelf, and you can type that part number in for that particular part and locate that tooling. That is like gold to you. Being able to locate custom tooling, for a job. So it means a lot in your crib to be able to locate, to know where things are immediately. I know there's other shops that, hey, they did a better job than us. Our plan was we were going to have somebody, we were going to put somebody in charge. It's a tough job to fill. It's like I think my thought process was with an individual, you're going to pick an individual. You need somebody with a brain because they have to deal with your suppliers. I had my individual actually did my layouts for screw machines. I trained them on that. They were a former screw machine operator, so they had a lot of knowledge, and a lot of ability. They could do quite a bit for you, and that's an aspect of the job that I really, the person that sucked that aspect up was me. I took over the layouts of the screw machines. It's probably about 6 to 8 layouts a week, so it's not too bad. And working out of a crib where I know where things are, it's not so bad. Mm-hmm. It's a part-time job back here is what it is. So, okay, I have other people from other areas of the shop. You hone in on one person, that you want to train back here for how to check your inventory, how to reorder, how to wash things, where they go, all that. And maybe you bring them back here 20 hours a week. But as far as the brains of the work area, I don't know, after how it's been for the last 15, 20 years. Let's see, we went to a crib manager in about 2001. So I really don't want to give it up. I'm kind of good the way I am. I don't know. There's pros and there's cons. If the right person falls into your lap, you think about that, but there's a lot to think about. It's your money that you're controlling, and these businesses are about dollars and cents. And you look at your bills at the end of each month, and when you can keep those bills low, your company makes a profit.
All right, let's talk about somebody who really does think in dollars and cents. And I know that you have some automotive customers, and these guys are just cutthroat, right? So tell us a little bit who these customers are, and I know you've talked about it in the past, like how you deal with them, and Japanese versus American, and I'd like a little light shed on that.
Our philosophy here as a business is once a customer gets to a point where they have cut the profit out of a job, or it's just nothing left. You know what? We just let it go. Mm-hmm.
So who in particular are you talking about? Like an automotive company might do that, or?
Oh yeah. The automotive customers for sure are the most cutthroat. They, believe it or not, they expect more than anybody. I mean, from what I've seen. Mm-hmm. Wow.
I believe you. That's what I've heard.
We as a business, all of us businesses, we make a business decisions as to who are we? Who do we want to be? We don't want to be that job shop that's making million-piece orders. We're not really competitive on million-piece orders. I mean, we're not. We don't have million-piece orders. If we
so what? How many piece orders do you? What's your sweet spot?
I think our sweet spot might be, in that 15 to 20,000 type range,
Mm-hmm.
and getting out jobs quickly to customers. So we're pretty responsive with our customers. They come to us and we can get something out quick to them. We don't want to be this job shop where we're dedicated to making, the same thing year round.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Are
the
you
way that
tier 2?
Oh yeah, most certainly. If not tier three. Like I said, when it comes to automotive, the majority of our work, is aftermarket through distributors.
Okay.
We're not. Rarely are we dealing with. It's been many years since we dealt with one of like the big three automakers
Right, because I
directly.
remember you telling me one time, I'm pretty sure I remember you saying, comparing working with the big three versus working with the Japanese car makers, etc. Were Do you
They
remember
seem.
something like
Yeah.
that?
Well, from what I can recall, from and we have shipped parts to Japan. From what I can recall, those parts that we were making, they weren't beating us up so bad.
The
And
Japanese.
I'd heard from some other companies,
You
how
think they're a lot easier, right?
they're more interested in a long term relationship
Yeah.
because they want customers, or I'm sorry, they want suppliers that are good at making their product, because they want their car to be reliable. So when your suppliers are good at making a product, the longer a supplier makes product, the better they become at making product. Um, the American automakers, they also have that philosophy, except the better you become at making our product, we want all your cost savings from becoming better at making the product.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is you can't reinvest in the new processes, new machineries. We're in this business to make a profit. We're in this business to figure out how to survive long term. And if we can't survive long term, um, then there's no future in having that customer as a customer. Let somebody else fight tooth and nail to keep that work.
Are you the person that negotiates with these
Oh no,
customers?
no, I'm not. Thank God. But I I've heard quite a bit from the people who do over the
Mm-hmm.
years, of what their philosophy is. And I tell you what, it's been a solid philosophy. It's allowed us to be a shop that is we've survived. Not we've survived. We've been a profitable company. I have to give I give our front office more credit than I do our machine shop itself for our success. Their philosophy
It's
of
probably you just being modest.
Oh no, no, their philosophy of how they're going to pick customers, what customers they want, the type of customers they want, what they do. Hey, that is gave this business a chance at survival. We absolutely have to be out in the shop. We have to be figuring out how are we going to survive. But I think our front office is what's the word for it? Cautious,
Yeah.
and we as a shop are cautious too. So we aren't like, hey, we're not full speed ahead in any particular direction. We might be moving cautiously and slowly in a certain direction, but we're careful. Like the concept of going out there and buying $1 million machine, that is not a that's probably not something that this shop's ever going to do. I'm not saying that you can't be successful doing that. There are shops out there that are successful doing that.
Can
For
you? But
us,
can you survive with Acme's for the next 2 decades? Are you guys gonna have
oh,
to
I
upgrade?
don't think so. I don't think you can.
So what? Do
Although,
you, what is what's the game plan as far as your machines
you know, if the worker aspect wasn't an issue, I think you could not only survive, I think you could thrive.
with
Because
Acme's?
Absolutely, because Acme's are fast, they are reliable, they have a low maintenance cost, they have a low cost to rebuild. Um, they are quite a machine. I think that if you still have Acme's 20 years from now, and you know how to use them, you're going to be a profitable company
Mm-hmm.
because of just how good. You have to really have other machines to really have an appreciation for what a bargain that is. It is a bargain, but like I said, you have a younger generation that they're geared differently. They are not backyard mechanics. Okay, they want to plug a computer into something that tells them what needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
It's simple. Fixing it is simple. They are not. They are not going to tear into a greasy, dirty machine and tear shafts out and get up to their elbows in grease doing that. They're not to say that you aren't going to find guys. You will
It's not
find
our
guys.
culture.
Yeah,
We don't live in a fix it culture. We live in a your iPhone breaks, go and get a new one.
yeah, yeah. As a shop, I mean, we have to evolve towards. I mean, I see us right now. We're a shop that, hey, we can meet this. We can. We've got a gap. What's our gap? Our gap would probably be that 5 to 10,000 piece quantity of sophisticated parts that you can do um, fairly quickly. That maybe your CNC lathe is not suited for because it's not fast enough. Your live
Mm-hmm.
tooling CNC lathe will not be fast enough to compete there. Um, and your screw machine, you can't justify the tooling cost of getting your screw machine going and having multiple second ops.
But you have no plans to buy that type of equipment to
Oh,
handle that.
I absolutely do.
Oh, you do.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, because such a machine,
So like a twin turret type thing or
a
twin
machine that
spindle.
I'm really looking hard at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tell me so we can go
A
find
machine
it.
that I see out there that I'm looking hard at, that I'm thinking about, that I'm probably gonna migrate to, that I see other shops migrating to, and there's a few variations of this machine out there. So maybe
Drum
not
roll.
this particular machine, but it's called a Lyco, and what it
Oh, the
is.
Lyco. Okay.
I like this machine. I like the concept of it. It's like a Brown and Sharp. The way it's a Brown and Sharp that can do a lot more sophisticated parts. You're going to have a quicker setup time on it. You're going to have that speed advantage
But
over
it's
your CNC lathe type machine. I like it. It's very well suited. It might be a machine that you can attract these young people because it's an impressive machine. So that's a machine that sort of falls
how
into
many
that.
axis is a Lyco?
Um, it's just a two-axis machine.
Right.
You've got two-axis slides, and you've got a turret like a Brown and Sharp, but you have that live tooling. I think you can. I don't know if you can
So
get it.
you'd rather go that route than go like Swiss or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like the cost. I
get
mean,
more for your
I
money.
think that cost. I mean, I'm looking at that cost, and okay, we go out there. We're a shop that, you know what? We can go out. We can justify buying a machine for
And you'd
say
buy it new?
Yeah, oh yeah, and we can justify buying a machine from 250 to 350. Won't put our company out of business. It's an amount of money that won't hurt our business.
Mm-hmm.
Where some of these other machines, well, they're super impressive. They're super quick. They do some awesome stuff.
What's a machine like? What's an example of one of those machines that
Well,
you just don't? It's not on your.
and in fairness to those machines, because it's like I'm not speaking out against those machines. I'm not saying, I don't want to bash those guys because these guys have impressive machines that do impressive things. And if your business has the customers,
Yeah.
then you could be in the market for a machine like that.
So
This is a
what if
business
cost
that,
if cost wasn't an issue? What machine would you go for?
boy,
Or you don't even think like that?
I tell you, I used to think like that, but I kind of stopped thinking like that. I mean, you look at like those hydromats and the rotary trunnion machines. That
Oh,
rotary
a
trunnion,
CNC hydromat? Yeah, that'll run you
the
2 mil.
hydromat, that Bafoli rotary trunnion. I mean, boy, what a I mean, hey, you know what? If you're sitting there and you're making 15 million of something a year, and you've got a decent part, and you're locked in at that, you know, hey, for what we have here, we're never going to compete with that, you know. But that's not really our way of thinking. Our way of thinking is we're looking at this machine, and that machine's millions of dollars, and how many machines can we buy for that kind of money? You know, we have to be cautious. You know, our little company here, we've managed to survive for, since 1959 by thinking how we think. I think that's the thing that's really been drilled
Because you
into my.
normally don't hear people say, we survive by being cautious. So there
Yeah,
must be something you're doing that isn't cautious. Because, it sounds like you're conscious of things, but cautious. I mean, if you just say you haven't stayed doing the same thing over and over
well,
again.
we're moving in a certain direction. You know, we're slowly migrating in a certain direction. So you take like that Lego machine. Hey, that's a machine where you could develop a customer base. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's competitive for machines like that. If you develop a customer base for machines like that, you might find yourself in that position where that next step up, that machine that it can do everything a Lyco does, but it can do it much, much faster, like that rotary trunnion or that hydromat. You know, all of a sudden you
If you're
may.
looking for a good deal on one, you should let us know. We
Certainly will. Certainly will, because that's definitely a route that I would take. That, you know, the thing is normally what I do, Noah, it's usually for my first machine. I will buy it I will buy it from, you know, brand new from a company. That way I get support, I
Yeah.
get training. You know, they really give you the runaround. They do a good job of helping you get established. Once you're established and you know that machine, you know, then you've got options. You know,
Yeah.
then you can
Yeah.
things you can go out there and you can find machines on that used market. And I've taken full advantage of
No, we
that.
can sell you a CNC hydromat for a really good deal. I mean,
And that's a machine. That's a machine where, like I said, if you're familiar with it, you know how
just
to
letting you
operate.
know.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking from the aspect of, okay, you know, you grow your market and your customer base for this type of part, and you have a customer you get to know well or whatever, and you're used to doing a lot of work for them, and you see this work growing. You know, hey, we didn't start with CNCs. You know, our first CNC was a cheap machine. Okay, I bought it for $40,000 out of New Jersey. That was our first machine. Now that one I
And you
didn't
only
buy.
spent $200 to go get it,
Yeah,
might
no,
I
that
add.
machine I did not buy brand new. Why didn't I buy it brand new? Because I felt pretty confident. A two-axis lathe, I could figure it out. Um, Now, what did we do like for live tooling? When I bought live tooling, Mazak, well, I did buy that brand new because we wanted the support that came
Yeah.
along with that machine.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty good thing to get the support. Um, so we went that route. But the market grew. All of a sudden, we had this two-axis lathe, and all of a sudden, 2 years goes by, and we find ourselves needing a live tooling machine. So we had a couple of just two-axis non-live tooling machines. We needed a live tool machine with y-axis, so we got a live tool machine with live axis. That market grew, so we're growing there in those machines, and that's what could lead a company to having a hydromat or a rotary trunnion. It's not something that us as a company that I would just take that plunge on
Yeah.
without the customers.
That's not your style.
Oh heck no, gosh, I've been to enough auctions in my life. I've been in that auction circuit, and often what you find is you're going to find one or two really, really expensive machines there. Okay, it's kind of like shop forensics. And what happened to this shop? You'll hear a lot of things. I've always been interested, like when I go to an auction, what happened here?
Yeah.
Heard a lot of stories. The grandkids, they didn't come to work. And here I am. I'm a grandkid. Um, So that was a story that, hey, it made an impact on me. Being younger, hearing how when I was younger, hearing about, well, the grandkids just didn't come to work. So I hear the story, they didn't come to work, they milked the company dry, and the company died. Often when I was hearing those stories, I might have saw one or two machines out in that shop that were really expensive machines, $600,000 machines sitting there. Well, you're a little company, and like us, you can't afford to have something like that fail. If
Yeah.
you go out and you buy a couple of these $600,000 machines and you're a 60 employee company like us, and that fails on you, your company may be in trouble. Your business may not survive. So what do you have to have? Well, I guess you have to have your grandkids got to be coming to work. That's for darn sure. You cannot be blowing it.
Are your kids coming to work?
I brought my daughter in to help with this tool crib. And what she
How
did,
old are your kids?
well, my daughter, my others are grown ups, and they're pursuing some other stuff because this is oily machine shop. But my daughter's in high school, my youngest that lives with me, and I brought her in here over the summer, and I gave her some tasks, and she went to work, and I loved it. The guys were telling me my daughter was a good worker, and I was really happy to hear that because I don't mess around. I don't give anything for nothing. I expect something. She came in here. She needed money for things, and I said, "Well, you can come on into work, and I'll pay you $8 an hour, and this is what I'm going to tell you to do."
$8 an hour?
$8 an hour. Had her trained on the system. She understood the system, picked right up on the software.
You go babysit. You make twice as much.
Nah, not around here. This is Michigan. This isn't Chicago. The houses are still cheap around here. So $8 an hour cash. It was $8 cash money.
This is last summer?
So she's 16. I got her in the tool crib. She's learning the software. She's putting things away. I was very happy with her.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the big
what is minimum wage in Michigan?
I think we're at $9.45 right now. But that's
so you were breaking child labor laws and paying her less than minimum wage?
No, actually, hers is $7.85. So for 16 years old, it's $7.85. So and I paid her cash.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard
time. I paid
time.
her cash. So that worked out pretty good for her. I just handed her cash money. But in another lesson that I learned, from forensic shop years of being at auctions, is that often, the grandkids don't know anything about the shop and how it runs. The founder, he spent lots of time in the shop, and he knew the equipment, and he knew how everything worked, and nobody was going to tell him what to do out in the shop. The employees weren't going to hold him hostage, and they can do that. And that's something I heard over the years. I heard that the grandkids, they really didn't know the shop. So when the employees aren't doing the right thing out in the shop, when they're screwing up, or they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know how to get the machine running, there's nobody there in the company that knows how to get the machine running.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. A very big problem, especially with the talent problem nowadays.
Do you work with your father?
Oh God, yeah. I worked with my dad back when I was a teenager. I was running
Does he still work in the business?
No, my dad died when I was 18.
Oh, I'm sorry. So who do you work with? Your uncle?
I work with my uncle, and I came into this business. And when I came into this business, I got offered a part-time job here because they weren't hiring full-time. So I was
not even for the grandchild of the founder.
Nope. I was working a night shift at a plastic injection mold. I was paying my own bills. My twin sister, she went off to college for engineering. Me, I just wanted to get my butt into work and do something. I didn't know what I wanted to do really, but I wanted to take care of myself. So I went to work, and I was working night shift at another place, day shift at this place, putting in about 78 hours a week.
Wow.
Paying my bills. So I got full-time here when full-time came up. God, back then it actually
They didn't want you there? Just working full-time?
They just didn't give me anything, as far as how that went.
Evidently.
that's how it worked. It wasn't easy. I think the hardest part was dealing with some of the longtime supervisors. I had, there was a camp that, hey, they really liked my dad. They liked my grandpa. They had a lot of loyalty to my grandfather, and they liked me, and they were good to me. And then there were some other ones that, they saw me as this threat to them. So I was in that position where I could never do anything right. That was
Mm-hmm.
the way they operated. And, I just took it. I did what I could. I
You
took
had
it.
you had to prove it to them.
Well, they weren't out to show me anything. So the position I was in was I had to learn everything on my own. So I just went ahead, learned everything on my own. I understood what it was. I understood that they were insecure. I wasn't out to hurt anybody. Wasn't out to hurt them. Wasn't out to disrespect them.
Did you grow up on the shop floor though, as
Oh
a kid?
God, yeah. Dad put me to work in 1988, summer of '88. I was 13 years old, and it was hot.
So I mean, so you came in and you already had a background.
I did. He did the same thing I did with my daughter. He wanted to make some money. I needed a bike. I was 13, so I came in here and ran a tapping machine. And I was working in here in the summers, running a tapping machine at 13, 14 years old. And then I was cleaning floors. It was dirty. And that's what I did. But all my friends wanted a job too. It was funny. They thought it was the greatest thing, being able to make money. I was being paid $5 cash,
Mm-hmm.
back then, to run machines and stuff like that. To me, this is what I thought. This is what my idea of, hey, this is what men do. Men go to work, So that was what I saw. That was my idea
Did
of
you
it.
always think that you were going to work there?
I was going to college. I was going to college for engineering, and that lasted right up until about '99. And I had a pull here from the company.
So how many years did you go to college?
I went for about 2.5 years
Mm-hmm.
for industrial engineering, and
So
I didn't know
first
if I
you
was.
worked some, and then you went to college.
I was working and going to college, and I didn't know if I was going to stay here or what I was going to do. And I think as my place in the company grew, the company here, they bought another machine shop in '98. I had to go to the other machine shop and start setting up their machines. I wasn't a supervisor, so I went over there and started setting their machines up. I didn't have a supervisor there. It's kind of nice, so I could just do what I wanted to do. So what did I do? I just made everything run really good.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of a sudden, it was, hey, can you come to the main shop and make the main shop run that way? I
Man,
kind of
it really sounds like you have not been given anything.
no, no, absolutely not.
Do
But
you have any ownership of the company?
at the current time, no. And you know what?
I mean, if I'm going in getting too personal, then
No, no, I don't ask. I don't know how I feel about that, and I don't really ask. I don't really ask for anything, and I don't really feel like I'm owed anything. I kind of feel like, hey, I've had a job my entire life. This business has treated me well,
mm-hmm.
um, and there's just not a whole lot to complain to. I've had people.
But your father had ownership of the company, right?
He had so much of it, but my dad had some problems, and he didn't want that. I don't really want to talk about that, but
okay.
The business ended up in my uncle's hands, and my uncle's always been a good guy to me, and I'm thankful to him. If he hadn't treated me the way he treated me, I don't know how the shop would be running today, because it instilled a lot of responsibility. When you're working for something, and there is no something for nothing. And then how I relate to our employees, I understand what it's like to
be at
maybe
the bottom.
money, or I understand how it feels to be broke. I understand what it's like. I understand their pain.
Yeah.
So I'm sympathetic to them. I want to help them. I want to see this company win. I want to win for them. most likely there probably is plans here for me long term. Hey, maybe this business wants to be in business for 100 years. I guess if it ends up coming to that, then I would maybe make that. I don't know. Hey, one thing about life is living a long time and staying alive is about having a mission in life, some type of a mission. And who knows what, for some people, maybe that's not a good mission, but I don't know. I guess I have a lot of appreciation and I have a lot of gratitude for this business.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather, have a lot of gratitude for the employees of this business. My uncle is still at this business. He's almost 80 years old.
Oh yeah, I
He's
was
still,
wondering.
he is still at this business, and he comes to work every single day. And that really it says everything about him as a business owner. Um, I have nothing but respect for him as a business owner, so because he doesn't have to be here. And he doesn't have to be caring about this place. So, hey, if I take anything from anybody, I guess I'll have to take that from him.
Mm-hmm. And you're, before I know you have to get out of here, but at the very beginning, you were talking about how your role as plant manager, you don't see your role changing into change. You see this as like the right fit for you working on the shop floor.
Unless I find people that I really have that much faith in out on the shop floor, but it will take a lot because, like I said, I mean, I'm out on the shop floor. What happens on the shop floor daily determines how profitable a company is. You've got two aspects: are your jobs running, and how much money you spending. Those two. I
Mm-hmm.
feel pretty competent. I feel pretty confident about um, about my cousin up there in the office. I think he does a great job in sales department, and I'm there to assist him. With any. He'll come to me. With the job. Hey, what do you think about this
Right.
job?
It sounds like you're very integrated, into the whole business aspect of it, which I'm sure helps a lot.
We work together here. He's doing his share of tough stuff up there. He's the guy that's got to tell the customer, no, we aren't going to take your crap. You know, I'm the guy out here saying, hey, you better watch it on this job. This job's got the potential to hurt our business. So, you know, and we work together pretty good. I'm glad I don't. I'm glad I don't have to work up there. I like working with the people, and like I said, I feel like I'm just one of them. You know.
Well, I'm sure that
Oh,
earns you respect from them.
oh yeah, certainly. I think it definitely doesn't hurt, especially you get somebody newer, or maybe they don't know you that well, and they're struggling on something, and they don't know you well, and well, you come over there and you help them, and you straighten out their machine, and you show them what they got to do, and all of a sudden they're kind of surprised. Had a few people say to me over the years, I never worked with a supervisor like you that could just walk right up to a screw machine and take care of the problem. I said, well, this is where this is a part of the company where the money is made, and you have to take it seriously. I would love to. Sometimes I'd like to be in the office, nice and cool in the summer, not
Yeah.
sweat, and with oil but it's where I have to be for this business, and I know that's where I have to be, and this there is no other choice. If I made that choice and I wanted to be up in that office, I don't think this business would benefit. I don't think the employees would benefit, and I'm about winning for the employees. When we hire somebody here and they come to work for this business, I have a responsibility to that employee to try hard for this business to win for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not trying hard for this business to win, then I'm cheating that employee out of their potential. and what they could have and what they could do. And sure, we could say so much comes out of that employee too. They have a responsibility as well, but and they do have a responsibility. But management has a responsibility to the employees, and if management wants to have good employees, then management has to have a pathway to prosperity in your little machine job shop for that employee, personal success and prosperity for them.
Well, I think on
I
that
hope that sums
note,
up.
yeah,
Yeah,
that sums it up. And I really appreciate you doing the interview, Wes. I think it's
like
gonna.
there's some owners that have this mentality that you know I'm gonna hire people in here and all they are is bodies, and I'm just gonna hire them in and just pretty much ignore them, and I'm gonna take what's mine out of this business. And boy, I tell you, that's a great way to be hurting for people. Um,
No, if
it's
you're only taking and not giving, then
you can
you're really gonna
you
go nowhere.
you can do everything right and still have problems getting people in this climate. I am. I see that. I think I'm in a pretty good position right now. I mean, hey, where are we going? Well, we're going to be one of these job shops where 10 years from now, we're still going to have Acme's. Are they going to be as large of a part of this company? No, they're not. But they're still going to be a part of this company. But
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have this other equipment that's going to be a part of this company, and we're growing these other areas of this business. We have to figure out how are we going to be a viable company long term that employees want to invest their life into. That's what you're looking at. That's how you're going to sell somebody with a brain. Is you have to figure out. They want to know how can they be prosperous working for you. And if they can't be prosperous working for you, they may not. They aren't going to stick around.
That makes sense.
It's tough, and like I said, us companies, everybody beat each other up, right around after 99. There was a surplus of people in this business. Everybody beat each other up. Now there's a shortage of people in this business, so we're going to fight for our survival because of the employee shortage more than probably the work shortage, for sure.
Thank you so much, Wes.
Well,
Really, it was a really great interview, and
thank you.
I'll let you know when it comes out. Have you been listening to any of them?
I haven't yet,
All
but
right. Well, you have to check out a couple.
well,
It's good
I
good
gotta
chance to see how everybody else is doing things, and
I
you
gotta
know.
get going here.
All right. Well, have a great weekend, and thanks again. I'm gonna ask you to send me a photograph, like a really high quality photograph.
Okay,
All right, man. Take it easy. Thanks. Bye.
see you around.
All right. Bye.